Hey guys, Stephen Gates here from myplctraining.com, and today I've got another video for you to help you become a confident PLC programmer, and specifically in this training to become a confident HMI designer or programmer. So we are going to get into FactoryTalk View SE, which is an awesome HMI building software from Rockwell Automation, and it works beautifully with Rockwell PLCs and PACs. So FactoryTalk View SE is what we're going to be focusing on. FactoryTalk View comes in a couple different flavors, SE and ME, Site Edition and Machine Edition. And Machine Edition is more for working with panel views. It can also run on a regular PC as well, but it's particularly useful for panel views. And actually, it's on the way out. So this is July 5th, 2019 when I'm recording this, and I know that ME is on its way out, going to be replaced by Studio 5000 View Designer. So anyway, SE is going to be here for a while longer, I think, and it's pretty powerful and it's easy to get started with, and it's similar to ME, so if you need to use ME, you can learn some things from this training as well. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to open up and create a project from scratch, and you're going to see just how easy it is to get started building an HMI application from scratch. So I'm opening it up here on my other screen. Okay, so here is our FactoryTalk View Studio application type selection window that pops up, and the bigger window of FactoryTalk View Studio isn't shown on the screen right now, but basically it gives you 4 different options. The first 3 are all different variations of View Site Edition, or SE, and these ones are for more complicated setups. This local station is what we want. Again, View Machine Edition would be usually used for when you're setting up a application for panel view. So we're going to choose SE and just hit continue. And it's opening up here on my other screen. Okay, so then it pops up this window that says new or open site edition application. So here's some existing applications I've created. Let's create a new one, and we'll call it Confident HMI Designer. Okay, and we'll click create. So now it takes a minute or two to load up all the stuff that's involved with a new application. So we'll just wait for it, and I'll pause and come back when it's done. Okay, so the new application has been created and loaded. And so first what we're going to do is just take a quick tour of some of the most important things you need to do to set up a very basic application. There's a ton of things here. The software's super powerful, but really you can start creating and testing and playing with and simulating HMI stuff with just a very few things. So first let's look at graphics. So under graphics we have displays, and this is where probably 95% of your time will be spent developing and designing an application, because this is where you actually create the displays. So we'll actually set one up here in a little bit, so stand by for that. So the other ingredient I want to talk about in more depth first is FactoryTalk links. So it's not set up by default, but to set up communications to a PLC we have to add a basically a communication server. So if we right click on, let's see, Confident HMI Designer here at the top, it gives us the option to add a new server. So you can add a Rockwell Automation Device Server, also known as FactoryTalk Links. Used to be called RS Links Enterprise, different than RS Links Classic. They now call it FactoryTalk Links, which I think makes sense. And then you can set up an OPC DA server, which means you can talk to a variety of different PLC brands that can talk OPC, which is another protocol. And then you could set up a tag alarm and event server. So for now, we just want FactoryTalk links. We're going to talk to a Allen Bradley PLC controller. So let's click that. we'll just go with the defaults, click OK. And now it's added this FactoryTalk links server icon to our basically our project tree here. So what we need to do is go into communication setup, and we're actually going to establish a communication path to the Allen Bradley controller we're working with, which in this case is an emulator controller. So that's opening up. And this software is very powerful, and it takes a fair amount of resources to run, so it may run fairly slowly on your computer. Just a quick side note, notice up here it says demo mode. So I actually don't have a license for this software running on my computer. I just had the installation files. Rockwell software is extremely expensive, but they've been generous with this particular software, and they allow you to run it in demo mode for I think 2 hours at a time, and you're limited to 5 displays in your project. But if you're testing and learning and just playing with it, it's more than enough. So we can definitely have fun with this, and it's free to use in demo mode. So if you get access to the installation files, you're good to go. So that's one of the things we offer to our students who join my PLC Training Academy, our PLC Training membership. And right now it's set up as a membership. So if you enroll with that, you get access to these installation files. Okay, so what we're going to do is set up a path to our emulator controller. So right now you can see we have 2 drivers set up, similar to how RS Links Classic looks. We have the 1789 A17 backplane, and we have an Ethernet driver. So you can add drivers, just so you know. So if you don't have these 2 or either of these, you can add them using this menu here. So as I'm looking through it, I don't see the 1789, and that may be because we already have it here. So let's just verify that. I'm going to right click it. Come on. And I'm going to go to properties. Okay, so maybe it's just there by default, which is great. So we'll just leave it. Okay, so if we expand this, you can actually see it's seen a Studio 5000 Logix emulate controller called HMI Training. So I'm going to show you that I've got this Logix emulate running over here. And wait, where did it go? Pull that back up. And my controller, if I hover over it, I'll just go to properties. The controller name is July 2019 FT View. So it's in slot 0, which matches this. Oops, and I clicked escape. Did not mean to do that. Yeah, it's going to try to close on me now. But anyway, I'm going to change or refresh this, and it should get the new controller name. There it goes. And now it's got the July 2019 FT View controller name. So now I'm going to reopen Logix Emulate that I just accidentally closed. And then we'll go look at the PLC project we have set up here in a minute. But before we do that, let's add a device shortcut here. So this is basically what you use in your project to reference the controller that we're setting up a path for. So instead of having to write out the entire path, let's say this thing was on a Ethernet network and you had to go through one rack into another Ethernet card and then over to a remote rack, and then that was in slot 7, blah, blah, blah. Instead, they let you just set up a shortcut name so we can reference that in our tags for our animation and our control objects in the HMI, which you'll see in a minute why this is useful. So let's just set up our controller shortcut name as, we'll say, FTView controller. And you could literally call this anything you want, but we're just going to call it that. And then we point to the controller we're going to use, which is this one. And then we click apply. Okay. Yes. And so now if we select this, anytime we use FTView controller, it will automatically point to this July 2019 FTView Logix Emulate controller. Okay, then we click OK. Okay, so now that we've got the communication set up, we can get to the fun stuff of setting up a display to control and monitor a controller, a PLC controller, which, as I said before, is this Logix Emulate controller here in the backplane. Okay, so before we do that, I just want to, before we set up the display, that is, I want to show you what the logic is running behind the scenes, so you know what we're controlling and monitoring. So, got 3 very simple rungs here, and this is what we're doing. We are starting a pump, and we are stopping a pump. So, this bit here is our HMI start pump 1 tag, which we're going to use in the HMI application here in a minute. And it will latch the motor start output. So this is just a tag for now, but we can pretend like it drives an actual output that turns on the motor start, turns on the motor for pump 1. And then we have the stop button driving the unlatch of the same tag. So this logic functions just like a make, seal, break type seal in logic, if you want to call it that, where you just have an OTE and you use the typical seal in parallel rung and so on. But this is just a little cleaner, a little different way to look at it. And then this third rung, rung 2, all we're doing is monitoring this pump 1 running input. So these are basically some inputs that come from our HMI control that we'll set up here in a minute. This is an output, the motor start output, that's going to drive the motor for the pump. And then this is an input that we monitor to see if the pump actually is running. Okay, so I have some simulation logic running in the background here under the simulation routine. It's really simple. All it does is when the pump 1 motor start is turned on, we start a timer. And then after 3 seconds, we turn on the pump 1 running bit. So this is a really simple way how you can simulate your logic by creating separate logic to simulate turning on inputs when you activate outputs with your original logic. Okay, so let's just see how that works. So I'm going to do a Control T to toggle on this start pump 1 bit, and I'll toggle it back off with Control T. You can see it latched it on, and then the pump 1 running bit turns on shortly thereafter. Okay, and this no op or NOP, no operation, is just there so that we can monitor the status of pump 1 running without activating any other logic. Okay, and then if we want to stop it, Control T to toggle the stop pump 1 bit. Toggle it back off, and the pump remains off. Okay, so that's the really simple logic we have in the background. So now let's go back into the FactoryTalk View project and set up a very simple display. So I just right-click Displays, created new. We're going to run through this quickly. Let's add a momentary push button. So I got that from this menu up here. It's a momentary push button. And the only thing you really need to do to get started is just to go to Connections, and we're going to browse to the tag that we're using in the Logix program, which is called HMI Start Pump 1, I believe. So be sure to do refresh all folders after setting up a FactoryTalk Links communication setup. And then it should show the controller that we set up with the shortcut name FTView controller. Go to the online tags folder, and you can drag this over to see what tags are available. And as you can see, HMI Start Pump 1 is right there at the top. We'll select that. All right. And then I'm going to go back to states, and these are just the states of what the button looks like when it's pressed and when it's not pressed. And so we want it to say start in both the pressed and non-pressed look. Okay, and you can change colors and stuff to make this look prettier, but we're not going to mess with that right now. Click OK. And then we'll go here again, momentary push button. Actually, instead of that, I'm just going to copy this button and modify it. Copy, paste. We'll just line it up right next to it. Open up the properties, go to states, and this is going to be our stop push button. Then we go to connections, open up the tag ellipses there, and we're again browsing to the FTView controller, online tags folder. Look for HMI Stop Pump 1, click OK, and click OK. Okay, so now we've set up our two start and stop push buttons. It's really that simple. When you click save, you'll be prompted to give this display a name, and we'll call it Pump 1. Okay, now let's create some sort of indicator that tells us the pump is running. So I clicked on rectangle, and this is very primitive, but we just want to get something up and running quickly in this short video. So I'm going to put some text on the rectangle. Pump running. Get it a little bit centered there at least. And then what I'm going to do is just for this text, I'm going to change the animation such that the text pops up when the pump is running. So when that pump 1 running input is active or it's on, I want this text to show. So we'll go to visibility, and that brings up this animation window. Go to tag, and again we browse to the tags in our FTView controller online tags folder. There's our pump 1 running bit or tag. Put it in there, and we want, it says expression true state visible. So when this tag is true, we want this to be visible. You can also set it up so that when it's true, you want it to be invisible. So normally it's visible, and then when the tag becomes true, you make it invisible. In this case, visible is what we want. Click apply, close, save. And now we can test this display really quickly by using this test display button. So we'll hit test display, and our word pump 1 running disappeared, and we have our start and stop buttons. So let's kind of get these guys lined up here. I'm going to get out of this so it doesn't look so wonky. Okay, so now let's see if our logic and our connection works correctly. So I hit the start button, and it didn't go, so I'm going to hold it down for a bit. There we go. So it latched in the motor start, and then a couple seconds later the pump 1 running bit turned on just like we want, and this graphic showed up, pump 1 running. Obviously it looks a little wonky because of how we have the screen sized. Maybe if we move it over, there we go, that's better. And it's not pretty at all, right? But making it pretty, we can work on that later. That's where the design aspect comes in. This is kind of the basics of just getting something running and testing it and being able to set up that communication link to control and monitor tags in your PLC from the HMI. Okay, so the pump is running. Let's stop the pump. And we stop the pump. There you go. That's all there is to it. Again, there's a lot more you can do with FactoryTalk View SE. This is just scratching the surface, but this is really the foundation, the most important thing you would want to do with an HMI setup is be able to send control signals from your screen and be able to monitor tags on the screen. So that's it for now. Hope that was helpful, and we will see you in the next video.